Hello and welcome to Wrestler Spotlight. I'm the Maritime Warrior, and today we are looking at the Mac Daddies of Violence, JohnnyGrunge and Flyboy Rocco, the Public Enemy. Now, before we get into the tag team career of the Public Enemy, let's look at the individual careers before they were the Public Enemy. Let's look at Flyboy Rocco first, who started his wrestling career in 1978 under the name The Cheetah Kid. His first big break in wrestling would happen between 1985 and 1988 when he would be an enhancement talent for the American Wrestling Association, AWA. In 1990, he would tour with New Japan Pro Wrestling and he would even face Jushin Thunder Liger on this tour. Once he would return to America, he would start working for the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. This company was based out of Philadelphia, and it is the company that would eventually become ECW. In June of 1990, he started working for WCW, first as the Cheetah Kid and later on appearing as Mario Savoldi. He would change his name for a third time in WCW, becoming Colonel DeClerc. Teaming with Sergeant Kruger, they would defeat the team of The Beast and Kaluha. This would be at Clash of the Champions 13 in November of 1990. They would then face the Steiner brothers at Starrcade 90 Collision Course. This time, they would not get the win. In 1991, the man that would eventually become Flyboy Rocco would work for Herb Abrams and the UWF. In 1992, he would head over to Japan to work for the Wing promotion. In 1993, he would work as enhancement talent for both the WWF and the WCW before going over to Germany and Austria to wrestle. And in September of 1993, he would make his debut for ECW. Before we continue with ECW, let's look at JohnnyGrunge's career in the early days. JohnnyGrunge would get his start in pro wrestling in 1987. He would also work as an enhancement talent in the WWF in 1990 and 1991. During this time, he would be working under his real name of Mike Durham. While in the WWF, he would wrestle such legends like the Road Warriors, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and the Big Boss Man, amongst others. In 1990 and 1991, he would also work for ICW, going under the name of Equalizer Zap. In 1991, he would also work for Herb Abrams and the UWF under the Equalizer Zap gimmick. He would tour Europe in 1991 and have a series of matches with the Cheetah Kid. This was Flyboy Rocco, his future tag team partner. During this tour of Europe, he would go by the name of Johnny Rotten. In 1992, he would work for the Win promotion and the TWWF. In September of 1993, he would make his way to ECW. He would form the Public Enemy with Flyboy Rocco, and he would adopt the name JohnnyGrunge. Their first match as a team in ECW would take place at Ultra Clash 1993, defeating the team of Ian Rotten and Jason Knight. The Public Enemy became known for using tables in their match. Now, they're not the first to use tables in wrestling, but they most certainly popularized the gimmick. The Public Enemy would win their first ECW World Tag Team titles on March 6, 1994, beating the team of Kevin Sullivan and the Tasmaniac. They would hold the titles for 174 days and defend their titles versus such teams as the Bruise Brothers, Ron and Don Harris, the Bad Breed, Ian and Axl Rotten, JT Smith and Tommy Dreamer, and Phi Delta Slam, Bruno Sassy and Dan Evans, before dropping the titles to Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck on August 27, 1994. On November 5th, 1994, they would win back the ECW World Tag Team titles from Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck. This time, holding the tag titles for 91 days, they would face such teams as Ron Simmons and Too Cold Scorpio, The Bad Breed, and would have a legendary feud with Sabu and Taz. Sabu and Taz would be the team to end their second reign. Sabu and Taz would only hold the tag team titles for 21 days. They would lose these titles to Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. But Malenko and Benoit would only hold the titles for 42 days before losing the titles back to the Public Enemy. This would start their third reign as ECW World Tag Team Champions, holding the titles for 83 days. They won their third ECW World Tag Team titles in a three-way dance involving Malenko and Benoit and Taz and Rick Steiner. During this third reign as ECW World Tag Team Champions, they would have a legendary rivalry with the Pitbulls. The two teams would do battle in false count anywhere matches, double dog collar matches, and baseball bat matches, all won by the Public Enemy, who would successfully defend their ECW World Tag Team titles. The Public Enemy would eventually lose the ECW World Tag Team titles to Raven and Stevie Richards. Around this time period, a new tag team would enter the ECW and would start feuding with the Public Enemy. This was Mustafa and New Jack, the Gangstas. The Public Enemy would win the ECW World Tag Team titles a fourth time, winning the titles in a three-way dance versus Raven and Stevie Richards and their new rivals, the Gangstas. They would only be champions for 21 days. They would lose the titles when Too Cold Scorpio would beat Rocco Rock in a double title match where the Public Enemy's ECW World Tag Team titles were on the line and Too Cold Scorpio's ECW World Television title was on the line. Scorpio would win the match and would choose Sandman as his tag team partner to defend the tag titles. They would remain in ECW until January of 1996, feuding with the Gangstas, but they would take their leave from ECW. Ending what would be their best run in pro wrestling. From 1993 to 1996, they were one of the top tag teams in pro wrestling, winning the ECW World Tag Team titles 4 times, and really being the team that made the ECW Tag Team titles a World Tag Team title. Going back to 1995 really quick, other than ECW, they did work for Wing in Japan, they worked for AAA, and they even worked a dark match at Survivor Series 1995, challenging the Smoking Guns for the WWF World Tag Team titles. In 1996, the Public Enemy would join WCW. Their first big program in WCW would be feuding with the Nasty Boys. The two teams would have wild brawls, have street fights, and double dog collar matches. The Public Enemy would also feud with WCW World Tag Team Champions Harlem Heat. This was Booker T and Stevie Ray. On October 1st, 1996, the Public Enemy would win the WCW World Tag Team titles, but only hold them for 8 days, losing them right back to Harlem Heat. They would remain with WCW until 1999, not really doing much because this was at the peak of the NWO's popularity. They would challenge the Steiner brothers a few times for the WCW World Tag Team titles, but were unsuccessful. In 1999, they would briefly return to ECW, teasing a match with the Dudley Boys that would ultimately never happen. In February of 1999, they would join the WWF, but this would be very short. During this short time in the WWF, they would face such teams as The Brood, Gangrel and Edge, Matt and Jeff Hardy, Too Much, Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor. They would even challenge for the WWF World Tag Team titles versus Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett. They would also have a match with the Acolytes, Bradshaw and Farouk, and they were badly beaten in this match, and not long after being embarrassed, they were released from the WWF. From 1999 to 2002, the Public Enemy would wrestle for various independent promotions like XPW, iGeneration Wrestling, WWC in Puerto Rico, XWF, amongst other promotions. On September 21st, 2002, Flyboy Rocco Rock, Ted Petty, would pass away of a heart attack. He was only 49 years old. When he had this heart attack, he was actually on his way to a wrestling event, the Propane Pro Wrestling Show, where he was going to be facing Pitbull Gary Wolf for that promotion's heavyweight title. IWA Mid-South has a tournament called the Ted Petty Invitational in his memory. After Rocco Rock would pass away, Johnny Grunge would continue to wrestle until he would retire in 2004. On February 16, 2006, Johnny Grunge, Michael Lynn Durham, would pass away as a result of sleep apnea complications. He was only 40 years old. Flyboy Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge, the Public Enemy, certainly left their mark on pro wrestling, being a part of that early success in ECW, seeing it go from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling. They're the perfect example of two guys that never really made it big in the WWF or WCW, but made it huge in ECW, and because they made it huge there, they stand out from the rest of the tag teams. They are one of the all-time greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. Go look at ECW in 1994 and 1995 and look how over the Public Enemy was. They were a big part of that revolution that was Extreme Championship Wrestling. And with that, that'll be the end of this episode. I want to thank you all for listening to the Maritime Warrior, and I will see you next time.